Hi all, welcome to my YouTube channel Know About Embedded System. We're discussing about embedded C interview questions, and before starting the video, if you're a new viewer to my channel, kindly subscribe my YouTube channel. Let us start the video. Embedded C interview questions. The first guys, the first and foremost question you can expect in the interview, especially in embedded system interview, is what is the difference between C programming and embedded C programming? This is a very frequently asked the question, and also most of the embedded system engineers should know what is the difference between C and embedded C. So basically, when we say the C programming, you might be knowing already the C programming is used to develop the software applications for our desktops and laptops. The main difference between C and embedded C is the key difference is this one. The C programming is used to develop the softwares for desktop applications or operating system applications. And when you're talking about the embedded system or embedded C programming, the embedded C programming is used to develop the coding part for your microcontrollers or your embedded system applications. And embedded C is nothing but it is an extension of C programming, and it is a hardware dependent programming. So this is the major difference between C and embedded C. C programming is used to develop the applications for system desktops and operating system applications, whereas embedded C is used to develop the software for your microcontrollers and embedded system. Friends, second major difference is your C programming is not a hardware dependent programming. So your C programming will run in all computers, in all laptops. It is not hardware dependent, but whereas your embedded C is hardware dependent. So once if you develop a code for one microcontroller, the same code cannot be run on a different microcontroller. This is called as hardware dependent. Whenever I develop a code for one microcontroller, it is not easier to port to other microcontroller. This is called hardware dependent. And third major difference is, in case of your C programming, we will have a maximum memory in terms of gigabyte. We will get GB, we will get memory management. That's why we will use a dynamic memory allocation in our C programming. It assumes the ample memory, that is nothing but we will get more footprint memory. So with the help of dynamic memory allocation, we can develop our own applications. But in case of embedded C programming, here you can see memory will be very less. Memory will be very restricted in case of your embedded C programming, since microcontrollers will come with a less memory compared to our laptops and systems. Then the fourth difference, if you see here, it uses a standard library functions such as printf, scanf, and so on. But in case of a microcontroller, so there will be no directly, you cannot use the library functions such as printfs and scanfs or any other standard library function. But instead of that, we have to depend on our GPIO and other peripherals which are available in the microcontroller in order to interact with the external and internal world. The libraries, the standard libraries, like we'll be using a stdio.h and the standard library.h in case of C programming, but in case of embedded C programming, we cannot use those. But instead of that, the hardware specific libraries, hardware specific header files we have to use. If you're using 8051 microcontroller, we have to use register 51. Then if you're using some LPC based microcontrollers, you have to include your respective header file. So that is a fifth major difference. And operating system, usually your C programming will use a Linux operating system or Windows operating system. And in case of embedded C programming, we do not use, in most of the applications, we may not use our operating system to run your microcontroller, to run your embedded system application, and that type of applications are called as bare metal programming without operating system. Without operating system, whenever you are developing code, it's called as bare metal programming, or sometimes we will use real-time operating system. Okay, so this is a sixth difference. And last one is the tools. we can use the different compilers for your C programming, example like Turbo C, GCC, and there are many different compilers available for C programming. And for case of in case of embedded C, we have to use again the hardware dependent softwares. We have to use like a Keel, MPLAB, IAR Workbench, and CCS Studio, and so on like that. Okay, these are all the major differences between C and embedded C programming. And if you explain this much, definitely a very good impression it will create in the interview. Now we'll go to the second important question, that is called, what are the basic data types of C programming? This is also one of the fundamental question you will get in the C interviews, nothing but embedded C interviews. What are the basic data types in C? What do you mean by data type, and what are the different basic data types of your C programming? So basically, when we say data type, a variable which is going to hold data type in a C programming, it defines the kind of data that variable can hold and how much memory that variable can occupy in the memory. So this is called the definition of a data type. So data type means it's a kind of a data that variable can hold and how much memory it can occupy in the memory allocation. So this is how we can define the data type. And in our C programming, the basic data types I'm going to explain. One is a character. This is my basic data type, character. So this can hold 8 bits of data, nothing but 1 byte of data it can occupy. This is the first data type, what fundamental data type we'll be using in C programming. And second data type is called as integer data type. You can see this is my second data type, integer data type, and it occupies 4 bytes of memory in the memory allocation. And sometimes we will use even short int also. So short int will take some 2 bytes of data. That will sometimes, even this is going to be compiler dependent, but generally short int will occupy 2 bytes and int will occupy 4 bytes. This is the second one. Then we have one more thing, long. So long int, it is also called as, when I say long, it is going to be long integer type. It will occupy 8 bytes of data. And next one is called as a float. The float is also similar to integer. It is going to occupy 4 bytes of data. And then we have double precision floating point. So whenever you want to store it for with a higher precision, then we will go for double data type, and which is going to hold 8 bytes of data. So this is a very simple answer, and if we explain this much, that's more than enough for data types. The next, third most important and fundamental and important question is, what is the difference between declaration of a variable and definition of a variable? It's slightly confusing, but for any embedded engineer, you should know the difference between declaration and definition. Let us see the difference here. What is a declaration and definition? So what do you mean by declaration? Declaration means this declaration is a process of introduction of one variable or one identifier, and we will inform to the compiler by specifying its name. Try to understand the word here. What do you mean by declaration? Declaration means we're going to introduce one identifier, or it can be a variable, or it can be even function. The declaration can be done even for a variable or even for function. So declaration, we're going to introduce one variable or a function, and this we will inform to the compiler by specifying its name. So that means when we declare a variable, we will give some name, and that we will inform to the compiler saying that there is one variable called as int x, and I'll be using in my programming in future. Okay, but there is a small thing we have to understand. In case of declaration, there will be no memory allocated during developing. But declaration, we will declare only the name of the variable and type of the variable, but it will not allocate any memory. So this is called declaration. So if you want to declare any variable, so we have to use in this way. So you can see the example here. So I'm going to use extern int x. Whenever you want to declare any variable, only declaration, then we have to use extern, saying that I'm going to use this variable in the another file. So this is a one way, and one more way is we can declare the function. You can see here, this is called function declaration. So when I declare here, just it will understand that there is a function, and your compiler will not allocate any memory. So this is called declaration. Then if you see the definition of a defining the variable, so now you can see definition is a declaration. In addition to that, it allocates the storage memory. This is very interesting. You have to try to understand here. In addition, so definition, what it will do, it will allocate the memory, or it will give the complete body of implementation if it is a function. Okay, so now you got a clarity, right? So what is a declaration? In case of declaration, we will just tell the name of the variable, and compiler will not allocate any memory in case of declaration. But in case of definition, we will do the declaration, and also we will define, and we will allocate memory to the particular variable. Now if you see here, these two examples, integer a. In the integer a, I'm going to define a variable called as a, and memory will be allocated to that. 4 bytes of memory will be allocated. And then integer b is equal to 10. So again it seems, so we're going to define, and also we're going to initialize. I'm going to initialize integer b is equal to 10. Okay, so this is called definition of variable. And here also you can see this function, whatever you are saying, this is defined, and how much memory it is required, that much memory your compiler will allocate to this function. I hope you are clear with the declaration and definition. Now, so this is a very important question again. What are the functions, or what do you mean by function in C programming, and explain its types. Explain types of function. Even though this question is very simple, but in a systematic way we have to explain for this question. Let us see what we have written answer for this question. So what do you mean by function? The function means it is a block of code designed to perform some specific task. Is called a function in C programming. So what do you mean by function? Function means it's a reusable block of code, a small part of the code which we will be using continuously whenever we require. A reusable blocks of code designed to perform a specific task is called as a function. And what is the advantage of this function? The advantage of function is the long or a large implementation, or a very bigger implementation, can be splitted into a smaller implementation, and those smaller implementation can be formed as a function. If I have 1000 lines of code, and I'll split it into 10 lines of code, and I'll make it as one function. For one small operation, I'll make as a one function, is called as function. So this is a very big advantage of function. The bigger program or large program can be splitted into smaller modules, and those smaller modules are called as functions. And whenever you create a function, it will be very easier to debug its implementation. Okay, and fundamental advantage of a function is to modularize the code. Modularize in the sense making a systematic in a model based design. Okay, so now I hope you are understood with the definition. Now we will understand what are the different types of functions available in the C programming. So basically in C programming there are two types of functions. One is called standard functions or standard library functions, and one more is called as user defined function. So I'll I'll discuss one by one. So one is a standard library function and one is called user defined function. One by one I'll discuss. First let us discuss about standard library function. What do you mean by standard library function? Standard library function means it is nothing but a built-in functions. Built-in functions which are given in a C library is called as standard library functions. Example, if I have taken very few here, printf, scanf from your standard stdio.h. These two basically functions which are defined in the standard stdio.h. Similar to that, square root calculation and power calculation which are defined in the math header.h, and similar to that, string length calculation which is defined in the string.h. Right? So these are all the standard library functions which are already available in C programming, and again basically these are all functions. Now the second type of functions are called as user defined functions. These user defined functions, what do you mean by user defined functions? These user defined functions are nothing but the functions created by the programmer to perform very specific task is called as user defined functions. Now user defined functions, again further it is divided into 4 smaller divisions. So they are defined like this: the functions with no arguments, no return value; functions with arguments but no return value; no arguments but return value; then arguments with return value. There are 4 definitions again defined under user defined functions. One by one we will see now. Now let us see the first one, no arguments and no return value. So what do you mean by no arguments and no return value? No arguments means I don't pass anything to the function. What do you mean by arguments? Means the parameter I want to transfer. Okay, that's called as arguments. And return type means whenever you exit from the function, it will return something. That's called as return type. The first one is called no arguments, no return type. Here you can see. So this is my main code and this is my function. Okay, in the function, observe here, I have taken my function and I'll print something here, right? Code. In the function code, you can observe here. So void means no return type and no parameter. Void means null. There will be no parameter and there will be no return type. So that type of functions are called as no return type, no functions. In the main code, I'm calling my function, my functions without any return value, and I'll not receive anything. So whenever you call the function, the control will jump to this function. Whenever you call a function, the compiler will jump and it will execute your function. So in this way, the functions will work. So I'll not pass any parameter and I'll not get any return value. So next one is called arguments with no return value. So try to understand here. I'll pass some arguments or nothing but parameters and I'll not take any return value. So this is the second type of function classification. So I have a simple code here. With the code we will try to understand arguments with no return type. I'll pass some arguments and I'll not receive anything from the function. So again observe here. So we have 2 parts. One is function and one is the main code. So in the main code you can see here, I'm going to pass 2 parameters here. X is equal to 10 and y is equal to 20, and you can see here add x comma y. So when I call add x comma y, so your compiler will jump to void add. It will take 2 parameters, integer a and integer b from the main code, and it will perform some addition here and it will print it. That's it. So there will be no return type to the main program. So there is nothing to return. So no return. So this type of functions are called as argument with argument, no return value. Okay. So I'll not receive anything, but I'll pass it. This is called second type. And third type, if you observe, No arguments but with return type. No arguments with return type. This is my third type of function. Same example I'm considering here. I'll not pass any parameter. So try to observe here. So this is my function call, and observe that I'm not passing any parameter there. I'm just calling a function called add. So processor, your compiler will come to the add function and it will perform addition, but after performing addition it will return something. So now I'm going to return something from your function, and that return value will be collected in a variable called as sum result. So this type of functions are called as no arguments with return type. I don't pass any parameter, but I will receive return value. The last one, arguments and with return value. So this is very interesting. So all parameters we will use here. We will pass the parameter and we will receive the return type as well. So understand here. I will highlight here what is going to happen. Here I'm going to call the function, and whenever you call the function, compiler will jump to your function definition and it will perform all whatever it is required. It will take a parameter x and y, 10 and 20, and it will perform addition, and then after performing addition, your return value, it is going to return the sum. A plus B summation, whatever you have done, that value will be returned to the main code. So this type of functions are called as functions with arguments and with return type. So I hope this video is clear. So if you feel this video is clear, please click on like button and subscribe my YouTube channel and gain the knowledge on embedded system.